It's time for another edition of the Collector's Corner.
And I am back, baby. That's right. Collector's Corner with your favorite friend of questionable character, aka Aloha Mr. Hand, aka me, is back. Have to thank my friends at the Sadistic Penguin Studios for giving me this platform to do this. As you know, I used to do this with the Tainted Glove Network, but the Tainted Glove Network is no more. Let's just say that there was an implosion related to money and somebody saying that he was getting money and somebody not getting it. So we'll leave it at that. But wanted to go through what's been going on. Been a little interesting for the past few months. Had a lot of stuff going on. But the last couple weeks I was at the Hall of Fame induction ceremony, as well as the National Sports Convention this weekend, which just wrapped up today. So I was able to get my hands on some good stuff and get some good stuff autographed too. So want to just show off what I got. So hope you enjoy. Of course, if you have any questions, suggestions, ideas about some stuff that you think I may have that you'd like to see, feel free to let me know. Doesn't mean I have it, but always taking ideas, suggestions, and everything else. So first thing I want to do is talk about, as everyone knows, my favorite player is Johnny Bench. So I did get a couple of bench things done during this time. So let me show those off real quick. So the first item is I had this done. I had one similar to this, but it was for Frank Thomas that I did that turned out quite well. So I figured I'd give Bench a try. It is a replica Hall of Fame plaque with his autograph on there. You could see right there, Johnny Bench. I think the Frank turned out better, but this one still turned out pretty damn good too. So really like that. Next is a couple of magazines that I had done. So the first one is a 1989 Hall of Fame program. Of course, 1989 being the year that Johnny Bench was inducted in the Hall of Fame. I managed to complete this. So you'll see on there Red Schoendienst, Al Barlick, Yaz, Carl Yastrzemski, Hawk's favorite person, and Johnny Bench. So I finally got this all completed. I'm going to send this to PSA probably in November at the Sports Spectacular show and get it graded and possibly get it frame it in the future. Yeah, good language there. But next is a Sports Illustrated from, the date is October 20, 1975. As you can see, I already had Luis Tiant on there, and I managed to get Bench added right here. This covers the first couple of games of the 1975 World Series. More about that coming later. The next Sports Illustrated cover is from November 3, 1975. A series to shout about. The Reds win the World Series. As you can see, Johnny Bench signed it because he's right there celebrating with Big Red Machine on there. I had this one authenticated by JSA. I can't wait to get this one framed and hang it up. I love how that turned out. Now, with Bench, I also got a couple of tickets done, which I'll probably get... here they are. So the first ticket is from Game 5 of the 1972 National League Championship Series. Now, this game is significant for two reasons. One, Johnny Bench in the ninth inning, the Reds were down 1. He hit a game-tying home run off Dave Justy. I hope I pronounced his last name right. But the bigger significance of this ticket and this game is that this was the last game Roberto Clemente ever played. Unfortunately, he died in a plane crash taking aid to Puerto Rico after an earthquake on New Year's Eve 1972. But this was his last game he ever played. He had just at the end of this 1972 season, September 30th, I believe, is the date. He had just gotten his 3,000th hit, which they consider one of the marks to get you in the Hall of Fame. But I think he was going in long before that. But and then I also have another ticket here, which I can't find at the moment. So we'll move on to some other things. Now, you heard me mention the 1975 World Series, as I'm making a mess. But you already mentioned the 1975 World Series. I have some other things from the 1975 World Series, and I find them quite cool. Oh, and look, I found the ticket I was looking for. This is a Game 4 of the 1976 World Series, signed by Johnny Bench. Significance of this: the Reds sweep the Yankees. The first two games in Cincinnati, the final two games, 3 and 4, in the Bronx in New York. They swept the Yankees. Bench hit 2 home runs in this game. Game 4 of the 76 World Series. You can see his autograph up there, Big Red Machine, and he was the World Series MVP for 1976. So, had to get this one done too. Now, going back to the 1975 World Series. Best World Series ever. Now, I'm going to start with Game 5 of the World Series. This is a ticket stub from Game 5 of the 75 World Series, signed by Tony Perez. Now, Tony Perez hit 2 home runs in this game, and I also had him add in the Big Red Machine dedication, and Siri's talking to me for some reason. But this is Game 5. Now, I'm going to jump to Game 7, because this one I got signed by Pete Rose, who was the World Series MVP, and also had him put Big Red Machine on there. You know, because he was the MVP, Big Red Machine. They finally won the World Series after losing in the 70 World Series and 72 World Series and getting beat in the 73 NLCS by the New York Mets. And when you ask Johnny Bench or Tony Perez or Pete Rose, how could they lose in 73 to the Mets when the Reds were a dominant team and the Mets barely scraped by to get into the playoffs? They all said one word: pitching. If you look at the pitching staff for the 73 Mets, you had Seaver winning a Cy Young that year. You had Jerry Koosman. You had John Matlack. A tough trio to deal with, to say the least. But everyone knows the 75 World Series for Game 6. Everyone's familiar with Game 6, with Fisk waving it fair. Voted the greatest game of the last, of the TV era, I think it was. MLB Network plays it, during the offseason. They always play that series of greatest games of all time. But this is a Game 6 ticket signed by Carlton Fisk. We know why he signed it. That's right. And don't forget, Bench was the catcher too. But got Carlton Fisk to sign this guy for me. Love this. Going to get this graded by PSA probably in November, but had to show this off. Now, as you know, the World Series is a big deal and everything else. Now, the 75 Game 6 was voted the number one game of all time. Now, I also here have Game 7 of the 1991 World Series, which was voted number 2, signed by Jack Morris. Why Jack Morris? Jack Morris pitched a 10-inning complete game in Game 7 of the 1991 World Series. Perhaps the single greatest World Series effort of all time. And as you know, the final score was 1-0, with the Twins winning in the bottom of the 10th. Now, the funny thing about the Twins winning the World Series in 1987 and 1991, they won every home game. They had home field advantage both years, 87 and 91. They won games 1, 2, 6, and 7. Lost all their games on the road. I think they're the only team that has done that. Not once, but twice. The funniest thing, though, is in 2019, the Washington Nationals won the World Series by winning all the road games. Go figure. I don't know. It's a weird world. But moving on, again, the World Series, and we want to talk about some great playoff and World Series moments. I have them. This one hits close to home. This is a Game 3 of the 2005 World Series ticket signed by Jeff Blum. Of course, we know the reason Blum signed this ticket is because he hit the home run in the 14th inning to give the White Sox the lead on their eventual way to sweeping the Astros out of town. One of my favorite sporting memories of all time. I got the privilege of going to Games 1 and 2 of the World Series. I will say that Game 2, it was much louder when Konerko hit the slam versus Pasednik hitting the walk-off home run. And I think part of the reason why was everybody was in shock that Pasednik hit a home run. Konerko's slam was the loudest I've probably ever heard the park, to be honest with you. It's something I'll never forget. I just remember walking out down the right field ramp, right by Section 108, by the way, walking out after game 2, just mumbling to myself, they're coming back for a parade. This is over. And it was. But I digress. Now, October 15th, 1988, it'll be a 35th anniversary, had two significant sporting events happen on the same day. One, which you didn't think could be topped, it was topped by the other. So it started in the afternoon. It started with a football game, mind you, college football game, mind you, that ESPN actually did a documentary about called Catholics versus Convicts. That's right, a ticket stub from the Catholics versus Convicts game at Notre Dame. Number 1 Miami versus, I believe they were number 4 Notre Dame. Both undefeated coming in. Notre Dame won 31-30 with Miami failing to convert on a 2-point conversion with no time left. It was an incredible game to watch. It was phenomenal. It was everything you can imagine. You can imagine what it was like being in a bar on the south side of Chicago watching the Irish win this game. There were a lot of happy celebrating people, and the celebrations went into the night because that night, same night, was game 1 of the 1988 World Series. Today, I got Kirk Gibson to sign this ticket stub from game 1 of the 1988 World Series. That's right. The back foot slider on a 3-2 count in the bottom of the 9th with an injured Gibson strolling up to the plate, hitting it out of the park. As Vin Scully said, she is gone. And if you've ever heard Jack Buck on the radio side, I don't believe what I just saw. That all came from this game. That's right. The Oakland A's were heavy favorites, and the Dodgers led off the game with Mickey Hatcher. Steve Sax got hit. Mickey Hatcher hits a 2-run home run to give the Dodgers a 2-run lead. Jose Canseco comes up in, I believe, the 3rd inning and hits a grand slam to dead center. He dented the camera in dead center with the home run he hit to give the A's a 4-2 lead. As you know, went back, and as you know, the Dodgers kept chipping away, and finally Gibson came up after Dennis Eckersley surprisingly walked a batter in the bottom of the 9th inning, which he only walked like 10 batters that year or something like that. His control was outstanding. But Gibson has gone on record for years saying once he got to a 3-2 count, a full count, he knew a backdoor slider was coming, and he sat on the pitch and he drilled it. So the World Series has given many, many memories. Now, I have a few here that, bring to mind some of those memories and everything else that I think is awesome. I'll start with the 72 World Series, which featured the Big Red Machine versus this team from Oakland that nobody gave a chance to. This was the Mustache Gang, Charlie Finley's Rebel Oakland A's, a.k.a. the Swinging A's. Now, the A's won in 7 games, thanks in large part to this man, Gene Tenace. Game 1 in Cincinnati, he hits 2 home runs in his first 2 he hits a home run in each of his first 2 at-bats, leading the way to the Reds winning and leading the way to him being the World Series MVP. Very nice ticket, great shape. Now, Game 2 was an interesting game, not only for what happened on the field with the Oakland A's winning, but also because this was Jackie Robinson's last public appearance. Unfortunately, he passed away, I want to say about 2 weeks later after making this appearance. This is when he talked about wanting to see a black man in the dugout when he gave that speech. But this ticket stub is signed by Joe Rudi. Now, what Joe Rudi did in this game was he hit a home run in the World Series, which is cool in itself. I would love to hit a home run in the World Series, to be honest with you. But he also made an incredible game-saving catch in the bottom of the 9th inning. And one of the things I always tell people that I wish the White Sox would understand, and if they would watch these old Oakland A's teams, these early 70s Oakland A's teams, they would get it. Fundamentals. If you watch the play, Rudi catches the ball against the wall with his back to the infield. He comes down and throws. He throws it to a spot because he knows that Bert Campaneris, the shortstop, will be at that spot. And sure enough, Campaneris is at that spot, turns and wheels, and throws to first base, and nearly picks off Tony Perez, who is struggling to come back to first base after the ball was caught because he didn't think it was going to be caught. The play is on YouTube. Go watch it. You'll understand what I'm talking about. It's something I would love to see the White Sox get to the point where their fundamentals were that sharp. And then of course there's Game 7. The A's go back to Cincinnati and lose Game 6 after taking a 3-2 lead in Oakland. Oakland won the first 2 games in Cincinnati. Then they lost Game 3, won Game 4, lost Game 5 in Oakland. Lost Game 6 in Cincinnati, and went in on Game 7 and won. I believe the final score was 3-2. Here's a ticket stub from that game with Rollie Fingers getting the final out. So I had asked Rollie if he would sign this for me, and he was gracious enough to do it and put the Hall of Fame 92 logo on there. So the A's won that series. They went on to win in 73 and 74. The interesting part of this is Reggie Jackson was not available for the 72 World Series. He had blew out his hamstring, I believe it was, in Game 5 of the ALCS versus the Detroit Tigers on a double steal. That play, of course, you can also see on YouTube, but think of the game back then. You have Reggie Jackson, Mr. October, before he became Mr. October, doing a double steal. That would never, ever, ever happen today, but it's a fascinating play to watch unfold, and again, you could see it on YouTube. But speaking of those Oakland A's, so 1973, they play against the Mets, which we talked about earlier with the Reds. Everyone thought it would be a rematch. And the A's had a tough time. They had some stiff competition in the AL in the form of the Baltimore Orioles. Don't discount the Orioles. They were a damn good team at that point in time. But this is a ticket stub from Game 7 of the 1973 World Series. Significance of this, Reggie Jackson is not only the 1973 AL MVP, he is also the 1973 World Series MVP. So I asked him if he could put Mr. October, AL MVP, World Series MVP. This was the beginning of Mr. October, but we know when he officially became Mr. October. But this was the start. He hit his first home run, World Series home run in this game. Now, as I mentioned, the A's won in 73 and 74. This is a ticket stub from Game 5 and 74, where the Oakland A's beat the Los Angeles Dodgers 4-1, who were a favorite, if you believe it or not. The A's were 2-time champs and the Dodgers were the favorites. Go figure. If you ask any of the A's players, they were a little pissed off about it. But I got Rollie Fingers to sign this one with 74 World Series MVP, since that's what he was. He recorded the final out in the 72 and 74 World Series, and Darryl Knowles got the final out in the 73 World Series. Now, you heard me mention Mr. October. Have to bring him back up because we know the date he became Mr. October. I shouldn't say the date. I should say the game where he became Mr. October. Game 6 of the 1977 World Series. Signed by Reggie Jackson, Mr. October. Obviously, very understandably, the 1977 World Series MVP. This is a ticket from that game, signed by Mr. Jackson. Now, there's also been some great moments in playoff history, and I have a couple of them here. The first one is from the 1985 NLCS Game 5, signed by Ozzie Smith. A little tough to make out, but Ozzie, of course, hits the game-winning home run with the legendary play-by-play of "Go Crazy, folks, go crazy." So you can see here, it's game-winning home run there, and it's "Go Crazy, folks" on there. Signed by Ozzie. Now, Cub fans aren't going to like the next two because it's one man who did some damage against him. This is a ticket from Game 4 of the 1984 NLCS, autographed by Steve Garvey. Game 4, you remember, he hits a game-winning home run off of Lee Smith, which is represented by this game. And when I showed him this to get him to sign it, he cracked jokes about, oh, wow, this one, how much did this cost? $20 for this ticket. It was $20. Think about that. Think you can get a playoff ticket for $20 these days? No, not really. But then, here's Game 5 of the 1984 NLCS, signed by Mr. Garvey again, the 84 NLCS MVP. As you know, in 84, the Cubs had to host the first 2 games because they were both day games, and then went on the road to San Diego for the final 3. The Cubs beat the Padres the first 2 games, and it looked like they were on their way. And then they lost the 3 in a row in San Diego for the Padres to win the 84 NL pennant. Weird coincidence. The day the Cubs lost the NL pennant to the Padres is also the day that Walter Payton broke Jim Brown's rushing record in the NFL against the New Orleans Saints. Same day for both. Now, I have a couple more items, which I think are interesting. I'll go with a couple baseball ones and then a football one to close. This is Game 1 of the 1983 ALCS. Lamar Hoyt pitched a complete game. Just totally shut the Orioles down. Thought the White Sox were on their way. Sadly, they weren't. I will say, having conversations with Eddie Murray and Cal Ripken Jr., who were both on that 83 Orioles team, they said point blank they had to win in 4 because they knew they couldn't beat him in Game 5. That's how well Hoyt was pitching that year. Sadly, Hoyt is no longer with us. He ran into some issues off the field, obviously. And then one of the things, too, that people may not remember, Lamar Hoyt was traded to the San Diego Padres for this scrawny little shortstop named Ozzie Guillen. Who the hell is this Ozzie Guillen guy? We know how that turned out. And I'm going to close with 2. I know I said one football item, but I'm going to close one more baseball item and then a football item. I got this done. This is Carlton Fisk, Marty Perez, and Pete Rose. I love these 76 Hostess cards. I have the complete set of the individual ones, and I like doing the panels and getting them signed. You can usually get some good stars on this. It took me a little bit. The hardest one was Marty Perez to get, but I did get all of them. So I just got this from Pete Rose last week in Cooperstown. And I'm going to close on this one. The 85 Bears may be one of the greatest football teams of all time. There's no argument they're one of the greatest teams. Maybe the greatest team of all time, but definitely in the top 3 or 4. I don't think anyone can argue that. Here's a ticket stub from their game against the San Francisco 49ers in 1985. It was on October 13th, 1985. The Bears won, okay, which was good. The significance of this ticket stub: this was Jerry Rice's first NFL start. His first NFL start came against the 85 Bears. So I got Mr. Rice to sign this. He was shocked that he saw it. And I jokingly said to him, "Why'd you beat the shit out of the Bears all those years?" And he had a good laugh at it and everything else. But Jerry Rice's first start came against the 85 Bears. Think about that. You had, without question, the GOAT receiver of all time have his first NFL start against the Bears defense, the 46 defense. It's amazing. It's astonishing. But that's what I got for today. Like I said, I got a bunch of stuff. Hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions, feedback, feel free to let me know. And again, thanks to my friends at the Sadistic Penguin Studio for giving me the platform to do this. Everyone, have a great day, and aloha.